Have you ever had a dream that stayed with you for years? Not because it scared you, but because you knew it meant something. And I'm talking about a nighttime dream. That's what I'm talking about. For me, it was always the same dream. It was about a tornado. And looking back, I realized that dream wasn't predicting my future. It was teaching me how to recognize patterns under pressure. Welcome to the Kathie Owen Perspective podcast. My name is Kathie Owen, and I study human behavior under pressure, working with founders, leadership teams, and organizations navigating moments of uncertainty, from mergers and acquisitions to succession, growth, and major change. My work focuses on the patterns that quietly shape leadership, culture, and enterprise value long before they become obvious. Today's episode is unlike anything I've shared before. Instead of teaching a concept, I'm going to read a chapter from my newly revised memoir, The Truth Bubbles Up. People often ask me where my work came from. The answer is not a certification, it's not a degree, and it isn't one workplace or one relationship. It came from a lifetime of watching pressure reveal what was already there. This book is the story of that journey. It's the origin of the ideas that eventually became human patterns under pressure. If you'd like to read the entire book, you'll find a link to that in the show notes and description below, along with a companion blog post that expands on this chapter and includes additional resources. Now, without further ado, let's get into the chapter. The Truth Bubbles Up. Chapter 15. Same pattern, different building. Every workplace has a nervous system. Under pressure, it tells the truth. Kathie Owen. There are moments in life that seem insignificant when they happen. Then, years later, you realize they mark the end of one chapter and the beginning of another. For me, one of those moments happened in December of 2019. Our human resources director was dying of lung cancer. A small group of us went to visit her at the hospital. She could barely breathe. I remember standing there watching someone take what would be among her final breaths. There was nothing dramatic about it. No profound speech, no final lesson. Just the reality of life. A few hours later, she was gone. At the time, I didn't know why that day stayed with me. Looking back, it was because something else was ending too. Not a life, a season, a culture, a way of operating, a system. A few weeks later, our chief financial officer retired. He had been the stabilizing force within the company for years. Soon after, the pandemic arrived. And that's when everything changed. Not overnight, but steadily. Almost imperceptibly at first. Then, all at once, fear entered the system. And when fear enters the system, something interesting happens. People begin searching for certainty. Policies multiply. Control increases. Trust decreases. Communication changes. Curiosity disappears. People stop asking questions and start protecting positions. The company I had known for years slowly became something different. I wasn't working in human resources. I wasn't an executive. I wasn't involved in strategic planning. I ran the wellness center. I was the fitness and wellness director. At least that was my title. But over the years, something unexpected happened. Employees talked to me. A lot. People tell fitness professionals things. They tell us about stress, marriage problems, health concerns, work frustrations, family struggles, leadership challenges, burnout, fear, life. By the time the pandemic arrived, I had spent years listening. And when you spend enough time listening, patterns begin to emerge. At first, I thought I was helping people improve their health. Eventually, I realized I was studying human behavior. I just didn't know it yet. The Wellness Center became an unexpected observation deck. From there, I could see things happening throughout the organization. People who felt valued performed differently than people who felt invisible. Leaders who created trust generated different results than leaders who created fear. Departments developed personalities, cultures developed nervous systems. Pressure revealed things. Always. The more pressure that entered the system, the more visible those patterns became. I noticed employees becoming afraid to speak openly. I noticed information being filtered. I noticed growing gaps between what leaders believed was happening and what employees were experiencing. And because I cared deeply about the organization, I spoke up. I thought that was what responsible people did. I shared concerns. I reported observations. I communicated patterns I believe leadership needed to understand. I wasn't trying to create conflict. I was trying to create awareness. There is a difference. What I didn't understand at the time was that awareness is only welcomed in systems that feel safe enough to hear it. In fearful systems, awareness often feels like a threat. That realization changed my understanding of leadership forever. Over time, I found myself less focused on gym equipment and wellness challenges and more focused on people. The gym had started with a few pieces of used equipment, and over the years it evolved into something much bigger. Health fairs, wellness initiatives, fitness programs, education, connection, community. But the most valuable thing I gained wasn't any of those. It was perspective. I began seeing the same patterns I had witnessed in families, the same patterns I had witnessed in relationships, the same patterns I witnessed throughout my own life. Different building, same pattern. Control, fear, identity, belonging, trust, psychological safety, pressure. The names changed, the pattern didn't. Eventually, the gap between what I was observing and what the system wanted from me became too large. At the time, I thought the story was about being fired. Looking back, I see something different. The system and I had become incompatible. The organization wanted someone who would stay inside the boundaries of the role. I had already stepped outside of them. I was no longer simply running a gym. I was observing human behavior. I was connecting dots. I was asking questions. And once you begin seeing patterns, it's very difficult to stop seeing them. The day I lost my job remains one of the hardest days of my life. I didn't get to say goodbye to many people I cared about. I left carrying confusion, grief, anger, disappointment, and fear. As I drove off the property for the final time, something caught my eye. A black hawk sat nearby, eating a snake. I stared at it for a moment, then I drove away. I don't pretend to know exactly what it meant. I only know it stayed with me. Some symbols arrive in our life for reasons we don't fully understand until much later. The months that followed were difficult. Then difficult became unbearable. Anxiety showed up. Panic attacks appeared. My confidence disappeared. My identity collapsed. For 18 months, I wandered through one of the hardest seasons of my life. I thought I was grieving a career. I wasn't. I was grieving an identity. The woman who had spent years helping others suddenly had to learn how to help herself. And that lesson humbled me. Then something unexpected happened. I found my way back to Toastmasters. Not because I wanted to become a speaker, because I needed to find my voice again. I had spent years observing. Now it was time to speak. The speeches came, the insights came, the patterns came. One observation led to another, then another, then another. Eventually, everything connected. The childhood stories, the marriage, the custody battles, the therapist, the workplace, the pressure, the fear, the control, the identity, the belonging, the nervous systems, all of it. For years, I thought I had lived through a series of unrelated experiences. I was wrong. I had been studying the same thing my entire life. Human beings under pressure. Families, relationships, organizations, leaders, teams, different buildings, same patterns. And for the first time, I finally understood what I was here to teach. All right, that is chapter 15 from The Truth Bubbles Up. Every time I read that chapter, I notice something different. When I first lived those experiences, I thought they were separate stories. Today, I see one story, one pattern. As I drove away that day and saw a black hawk on the ground carrying a snake, I knew I had witnessed something significant, even if I couldn't explain it at the time. Looking back now, I don't think it was predicting the future. I think it was reminding me of something much older. Nature doesn't resist reality, it responds to it. The tornado that opens this book taught me something similar. For years, I thought that dream was about surviving a storm. Now, I think it was teaching me how different people move through the same storm. One son instinctively stayed close to me, sensing emotion before anything else. The other son let go of my hand and stepped into uncertainty, trusting what he saw instead of what he feared. Neither response was wrong. They were simply different ways of navigating pressure. Some people recognize emotions first. Some people recognize intentions first. Over time, I realized my work has become learning to recognize emotions and intentions. That's what I study today. Not because I have all the answers, because life kept placing me in situations where the patterns became impossible to ignore. If you've listened this far, I hope one thing stays with you. Pressure is rarely the whole story. It simply reveals the story that was already unfolding. Thank you for joining me today. If you'd like to read the rest of The Truth Bubbles Up or explore the companion resources for this chapter, you'll find everything linked in the show notes and description below. Until next time, keep observing, because sometimes the smallest patterns reveal the biggest truths.